The movie opens with our protagonist, Lynette, waking up to a voicemail from a woman, asking her to call back to discuss her outstanding loan balance. If Lynette doesn't respond soon, the matter may escalate to the repossession team. Regardless, Lynette doesn't respond, and instead goes to wake her older brother, Kenny, who has Down syndrome. She also wakes her mom, Doreen, reminding her that they have a 2:30 appointment to sign the house papers today. She reminds her mom that if they don't pay up front, they'll be evicted, and asks her to grab the check on her way. But Doreen seems unconcerned, and barely pays attention to what her daughter is saying. After getting ready, the siblings leave the home, and they're excited about the big day today. Lynette is happy because once they have the property in their name, social services can't take Kenny away again. Shortly after, Lynette arrives at her job, which is a bakery, and she begins working, while Kenny just waits for her. In the afternoon, she attends her classes at the university, while again accompanied by her brother. But Kenny says that teacher looks like Hillary Clinton, which causes both of them to get kicked out of the class. Despite the setback, Lynette doesn't let anything ruin her day, and remains excited because they're getting the house today. Next, the siblings go to meet the current owner of the house, David, and his lawyer. It turns out that because of his father's good relationship with Lynette's family, David has given them several extensions, and even a special price. He then explains that Doreen is also required to co-sign the papers for the loan, and asks her to make it quick since he's in a hurry. Lynette assures him that her mom will arrive soon and immediately calls her. But to her shock, Doreen responds that she can't make it, and doesn't give any reason before abruptly hanging up. As a result, a distressed Lynette heads home with her brother, and she begins to freak out. Shortly after, Doreen also arrives, and Lynette is shocked to see that her mom has bought a new car. She's further outraged when she learns that Doreen paid for the car using the $25,000 that was supposed to be the down payment for the house. But Doreen argues that it's her money anyway, and that she has the right to do whatever she wants after working hard all her life. Lynette now begins to panic, realizing that they are about to be homeless, and Kenny will be taken away. She claims they can still fix things, as she had secured an extension from David until tomorrow. But Doreen argues that the house is shitty anyway, and refuses to return the car. Lynette tries to grab the car keys out of desperation, but Doreen stops her, and decides to take Kenny for a ride in the new car. Upon seeing this, a distraught Lynette vows that she will find the $25,000 herself, but her mom doesn't care, and drives away from there. Around 6:12 p.m., Lynette arrives at her second job, where she works as a bartender. She then calls David to apologize for what happened today and pleads for just one more day of extension. Unfortunately, he refuses to cooperate this time, and declares that if she doesn't pay $25,000 by 9 a.m. tomorrow, she will lose the house. Out of desperation, Lynette calls a man named Scott, and requests a meeting at their usual place, which he agrees to. At 7:14 p.m., she arrives in front of an upscale building, quickly changes her clothes, and puts on makeup, before entering. She meets up with Scott, and soon it becomes clear that she's actually an escort, and he is one of her clients. He wonders why she called so suddenly, and Lynette nervously explains her dire situation, and pleads with him to lend her $25,000 urgently. Upon hearing this, Scott bursts into a mocking laugh and tells her that her personal problems mean nothing to him. He says he likes her, and they have a lot of fun, but he doesn't want anything beyond that. Lynette feels a wave of crushing despair, but she agrees to sleep with him anyway in the hope of getting at least some money. The two thus head to a hotel room and get intimate. After they're done, Scott pays her $1,000, which is double the usual amount, and proceeds to leave. But Lynette soon notices that he has left behind his car keys and comes up with an idea. She quickly hurries downstairs, and gets into his Mercedes before driving away from there. Lynette then receives a voicemail from Scott, who asks if she's seen his car keys, but she ignores him. Shortly after, she abandons the Mercedes in a quiet part of the city, and returns to the hotel to retrieve her own car. Lynette then receives another voicemail from Scott, who is very angry this time. He knows she has stolen his car, and demands that she call him right away, but she ignores him once more. Around 9:24 p.m., Lynette arrives at the apartment of her old friend, Gloria, who's also an escort. Gloria lives in a lavish apartment, and appears to be reaping the benefits of being the mistress of a wealthy man. She is getting ready to leave for somewhere, so Lynette wastes no time and lays out her desperate situation. She urgently asks for the $3,000 that Gloria owes her from when she bailed her out of jail 6 months ago. However, Gloria claims she doesn't have that kind of money, and even accuses Lynette of stealing Scott from her, which makes her dead even. But Lynette refuses to take no for an answer, and explains how the feds could take Kenny away if they lose the house. After much insistence, Gloria finally feels a flicker of sympathy, and takes out $500 from her boyfriend's digital safe. She explains that her boyfriend would literally kill her if he found out she stole the money. Lynette surprisingly accepts it, and asks if she can stay for a few minutes. Gloria agrees without hesitation, and hands her the keys to lock up before leaving the apartment. But as soon as Gloria leaves, Lynette approaches the safe and tries to unlock it using random codes but fails. Around 10:16 p.m., she arrives outside the bar where she works, and approaches her coworker, Cody, who has just finished his shift. Lynette explains that she put some money in her safe ages ago, but now she's forgotten the code, and has already entered the wrong one 3 times, causing it to lock. She asks if he can help her, as she urgently needs money tonight. Cody wonders why she came to him, so Lynette nervously reveals that her boss informed her about his shady past. This offends Cody, and he also finds the whole situation sketchy, so he refuses and walks away. But Lynette again stops him, and offers $200 for the job. Upon hearing this, Cody considers for a while, and finally agrees to help, but only on the condition that he will be paid $400. Shortly after, the two arrive at Gloria's apartment, where Lynette shows Cody the digital safe. He refuses to believe that she lives in such a luxurious place, and that the safe belongs to her. Cody then presses her to be honest, and Lynette finally confesses to him that it's her friend's boyfriend's safe. He is now hesitant to help her, but when Lynette explains that it's for her family, and explains how desperate she is, he reluctantly agrees. Cody then explains that the only way to open this type of safe is to drill it, but they can't do it here because it would make too much noise. He says he will reach out to his contacts, and also asks for $800 for the job, which Lynette agrees to pay. Around 11:24 p.m., they cover the safe with a few household items to disguise it, and carefully manage to get it out of the building. Shortly after, they arrive at a house, and meet Cody's shady friend, Drew, and his drug-addicted brother, Carl. Drew finds the whole thing suspicious, and demands to know what's inside the safe, so Lynette says it's just money. Drew then attempts to force it open by drilling, but it proves far more difficult than he thought. He finally resorts to using a hammer, and manages to smash the safe open. However, Drew's eyes widen in shock when he sees that the safe contains not just money, but also drugs, and multiple Rolex watches. Here he realizes it doesn't belong to Lynette, and lashes out at Cody for getting him into trouble. Lynette then demands the money, but Drew refuses, and yanks her by the neck, demanding the full truth. And so, the terrified woman finally blurts out that the safe belongs to the rich boyfriend of her friend. Seeing her situation, Cody intervenes, and gets into an intense fight with Drew. During the chaos, Lynette manages to stuff all the money and drugs into her bag. Carl tries to stop her, but she strikes him with a heavy object, and leaves him collapsed and injured on the ground. Drew rushes to help his brother, giving Lynette the chance to escape from the house. Moments later, Cody approaches her with the car, and the two immediately drive away before Drew can catch up to them. Shortly after, they pull over at a roadside, where Lynette informs Cody that her friend's boyfriend is actually a politician, so he probably won't report them because of the drugs. She then counts the money from the safe, and finds that it totals $19,000, meaning she is still $4,000 short. And so, she asks Cody if anyone is interested in buying a Mercedes, and reveals that it belongs to a different man. Since it's the man's wife's car, he likely won't report it, or else he will have to explain to her who stole it in the first place. Upon hearing this, Cody claims he's willing to give her the $4,000 if the Mercedes is real. But Lynette doubts he is that kind of money and asks him to show the cash first. Just then, Lynette receives a furious voicemail from her mom, who is mad that Kenny is still at the neighbor's house. It turns out Lynette was supposed to pick him up since Doreen is at work this time. So, at 1:15 a.m., she rushes to retrieve her brother and also apologizes to the neighbor, explaining it was an unbearably hectic day at work. Next, Lynette introduces her brother to Cody, and the three of them head off together. They pull up in front of Cody's place, where he quickly heads inside, and returns with the cash. This finally convinces Lynette, so she leads him to the spot where she had abandoned the Mercedes earlier. Unfortunately, upon seeing the vehicle, Cody suddenly reveals his true colors, declaring that he isn't going to pay $4,000 for a stolen Mercedes, which could only bring him trouble. He points out that Lynette hasn't even given him the promised $800 for what they went through. We also learn that Cody doesn't actually have the $4,000, and the money he had shown her are just fake bills. Now, he demands half the stolen money, which Lynette obviously refuses to give since she needs it for the house. This enrages Cody, and he lunges at her for the bag, while Kenny begins to panic and scream in the backseat. In the end, Cody, who is much stronger, snatches the bag from Lynette and starts walking away. But in a flash of desperation and fury, this leaves Cody badly injured, so Lynette rushes to him and grabs the bag full of money. Despite what happened, she feels bad for the man who helped her, so she tosses him the Mercedes key, and drives away with her brother. Around 2:58 a.m., the siblings drive to a new location, where Lynette meets an old man named Tommy. She shows him her bag full of drugs to sell, and Tommy invites them inside. As he examines the drugs, a shocking truth comes to light. Lynette had been in a relationship with this old man when she was just 16. But he turned out to be a pimp, and forced her to sleep with other men to make money for himself. Lynette is still filled with rage and resentment, but Tommy tries to justify himself, saying he did what he had to. Next, Tommy reveals he doesn't have cash on hand to pay for the drugs, so Lynette asks him to connect her with another buyer. The old man then speaks with someone, and informs Lynette that a guy named Blake is willing to buy them, and gives her his address. But he also adds that he will only pay $3,000, and Lynette has no choice but to accept, as it's better than nothing. While she's leaving, Tommy warns her never to come back, but Lynette tells him that he doesn't get to pretend like their past never happened. At 3:42 a.m., Lynette sets off to see Blake, and soon arrives at the house in a fancy neighborhood. The siblings step inside, and are hit by the flashing lights and wild chaos of a huge rave party. Lynette soon finds Blake, and heads into his office for the transaction, while Kenny waits outside in the doorway. Once they're alone, Blake tries to act friendly and offers her a drink, but Lynette has no time for that and refuses. She hands over the drugs, but Blake only gives her $2,000. Lynette obviously refuses since it's far less than the agreed amount, and asks for $4,000 instead. Upon hearing this, Blake pulls out $4,000, but quickly shifts the conversation, revealing that Tommy had told him about how wild Lynette used to be. He asks if she's still wild, and when Lynette demands her money, he throws it all on the floor to assert dominance. The poor woman is forced to pick up each note one by one, while Blake watches with cruel enjoyment. After collecting all her money, she tries to leave, but Blake gets in her path, and tries to touch her, which enrages Lynette. She erupts into a complete mental breakdown and begins screaming, while flashes of the time Tommy used to pimp her to clients flood her mind. The cunning Blake takes advantage of this and moves in to comfort her, but he soon tries to get intimate with her. However, Lynette refuses, and smashes a glass bottle against his head. She hurriedly exits the room, but is shocked to discover that Kenny has disappeared. At 4:38 a.m., Lynette arrives at the party while desperately searching for her brother, but soon a bloodied Blake appears and informs his men how she attacked him and stole his money. And so, the men catch her and place her on a glass table, where she watches Kenny being held captive by the crowd. Soon, the glass breaks, injuring Lynette and leaving several shards of glass embedded in her back. Despite the immense pain, she approaches her brother, and the two eventually reach the car, and drive away. At this point, Lynette is completely shaken from the terror and chaos of the night's ordeal. Around 5:23 a.m., the siblings return home, and Lynette sends her brother to bed. She then begins counting all the money, just as Doreen shows up and sees her bloodied state. Lynette explains how she spent the entire night scrambling to gather the money for the house, and pleads with her mother to come with her and sign the loan. However, as Doreen begins picking shards from her back, she shockingly reveals how much she hates this house, and wants to burn it down because it's full of bad memories. That's when Lynette realizes her mother never really intended to buy the house, but stayed silent while she was struggling all this time. Doreen confirms it, explaining that she stayed quiet because she didn't want Lynette to scream and overreact. Upon hearing all this, a distraught Lynette decides to take Kenny, but Doreen argues that her brother is scared of her, and asks where she took him last night. Lynette wants to fight for custody, but Doreen points out that she is Kenny's mother, who has been taking care of him even before Lynette was born. She also reminds her that she cared for Kenny full-time when Lynette ran away at 16 to be with Tommy. This hurts Lynette deeply, and she can't believe her mother is trying to blame her for being trafficked at 16, when she was supposed to be there for her. Even up to this point, Doreen still doesn't care about her daughter's feelings, and insists that Lynette is responsible for her own decisions. Doreen also reveals that she has already made plans for herself and Kenny to move in with a friend next week. Upon hearing this, poor Lynette loses all hope, and heads to her room in a devastated state. As if that wasn't enough, she receives a voicemail from David, who apologizes to her because he changed his mind, and accepted a higher offer from another buyer. Lynette is crushed to realize that every sacrifice, every moment of violence, and the humiliation she endured was for nothing. Some time later, Lynette packs her belongings to leave, and approaches her brother one last time. She tells him she'll be gone for a while, but promises to return whenever she can, and to love him every minute of the day. Here Kenny assures her that he is her big brother, and will do everything to protect her. After this heartfelt goodbye, Lynette exits the house, leaving 2 envelopes behind, one addressed to her mom, and another to Gloria. In the letter, she tells her mother that she was just fighting for her family last night, in the only way she knew how. She thanks her mother for saying what she needed to hear, and says it's now time for her to fight for herself. The movie ends with Lynette finally embracing the chance to live for herself, and freeing herself from the burden of holding her family together.